Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 374. Today we're going to talk about Evolution, the dynamic game of survival. Now this is a game from North Star Games. I believe it came out last year and kind of really sold through its print run. It was on Kickstarter and I believe it sold out quite well. I just got my copy a couple weeks ago, and so I have a chance to play this a few times now, and it is based on an older game from Riot Games, which is a Russian publishing company, but it has been tweaked quite severely, I guess is the right word, and some gameplay changes there. And the basic gist of the game is you're kind of creating a little ecosystem in front of you and adding these different attributes and traits to these different animals that you're sort of inventing as you go, evolving, if you will, to try to survive everybody else's ecosystem that might be trying to eat yours. So it's a card game. Let's take a look at the mechanics and then I'll tell you what I think. Now here you can see all of the components in the game, and it does play up to 6 players. And I would very much call this a collector's edition style game. I mean, it is a huge step up from the original game, of course, which was just cards and a couple of dice. But, I mean, it comes with these player aids here, with this thematic sort of naming of Latin-style names if you want to do for your creatures, and it gives you a player aid and all of the different cards in the game, so you can make a quick reference of what each card does. And then, of course, a little turn breakdown there, and there's 6 of these in the game. And you've got this fancy first player marker here, nice wooden Brontosaurus, and this is going to go rotate around the game. As each round goes, each player is going to get a chance to be the start player going around the table. And players are going to get a hand of cards. They're going to get these awesome bags. So each of these bags has a sort of engraved, I guess, embossed, silk screened animal. All fake animals, it looks like anyway. And so, maybe not fake, but some of these look kind of fake. Here's one. This odd looking sort of giraffe style, I don't know what the heck that is. But everybody has a bag, and in here you're going to be putting your food tokens, and these are going to be worth points at the end of the game. So that's a really cool feature there. And of course you have your feeding hole here and on the board. So each player is going to start with 1 animal. And so these are cool as well, because you can have them going vertically down the table, or you can flip them over and have them kind of horizontally going down the table based on however your table space is worked out. Usually you want to play with these vertical because you're going to have quite a few of these out on the board, depending on the number of players. So each time you get a new one of these animals, you're going to add these little cubes here, and you're going to track the body size so they can get bigger. So you can have like a size 3, maybe a big Brontosaurus or something. Or you can actually increase the population, so you can have more of these little critters running around. So you can have a bunch of big ones, a bunch of little ones, or one, really, really big one if you really wanted to have something like that. So you can play with this, and you can play with the number of creatures that you get in the game. So as you increase, you're going to add these to the player display in front of you. So as I said, it is mainly a card game, and each round players are going to get 3 cards plus 1 for each creatures in front of you. So at the start of the game you have 1 creature, so you'll have 3 plus the 1, so you get 4 cards in your hand. And then all the players are going to take, and then they're going to look at the bottom right hand side of the card, and they're going to put a card face down in the feeding hole. You're not going to look at that right away, but what that's going to do is help determine the number of food that might come out here and be available for everybody to feed off of. So you may have some rounds with a lot of food and some rounds with no food. The food will stay here and persist from round to round. And then after everybody's done that, then starting with the start player, or even working simultaneously, players can take a whole mess of actions to sort of configure the area in front of them, and then we're going to go into the phase when we're going to start feeding on things. So what can you do? Well, the first thing you can do is you can discard a card, and then you can get a new species. So you take one of these boards, and then you add the 2 cubes there, and so you've got a new species in front of you. The other thing you can do is you can discard a card, and then you can increase the size. You can discard a card again and increase the population of one of your species. And the last thing you can do is you can use the card for these different traits. So there's a whole mess of these different traits, and what you're going to do is you can put face down above, or however you want to arrange the table like this, and you can put any traits you want face down out of your hand across the different animals like so. And then once everybody has taken all their actions, you're going to reveal anything that's there, and then these animals will now have these traits. So these traits are going to do all kinds of stuff, and all of it is going to revolve around feeding and surviving, possibly attacking other players, getting various amounts of food out of the watering hole, and so on. So what we should do is look at how the feeding phase goes, and then we can talk about the different traits and how they're going to interact with that. So after everybody's taken their actions, you're going to flip up all the cards that were put face down here earlier on, and then you're going to add up all of the numbers, and sometimes the numbers will actually be negative. So you can see this one actually adds 0, 7, 12 total, but sometimes it can be negative and actually take food out of the equation. So you're going to put the correct amount of food, again leaving any food that may have been there on the previous round, and then you're going to start feeding. Starting with the start player, you're going to go around, and depending on how your animal is, you can just simply take a food and then you add it to your board. And we can see I've added this particular food here, and you can see the food is actually double-sided. This is kind of showing the meat side and the vegetable side. It doesn't really matter, but you can take and add that, and then maybe it comes back around to me and I add a food there, and then it goes around the table again and I take that food. So that means this animal is now full because I've eaten up to its population. Just as if this one only had a population of 1, it's going to be full the first time I eat it. Now there is here the carnivore card, and you can see may attack and eat other species. You can never eat plant food. So they cannot take plant food from the center watering hole, but they can attack other species. Now you have to be bigger in body size to prey and eat. So let's say, for example, instead of fat tissue, this guy here had carnivore, and he was, let's say he was a size 3 or 4, and then this one was a size 2, okay? And you can even eat your own species, which is interesting. So he's going to go ahead and eat his neighbor species. So he's going to then, let's say he hasn't eaten yet, and he is going to get food equal to its body size. So if this was a size 2, like so, then he would get 2 food off it, like so, and because he's bigger, and then he would actually have to reduce his population by 1 because he's eaten one of them. Now, if you eat the last one, then this species is going to go away. It's going to get discarded. You're going to get the food for the body size, so we'd get 2 food in this case. So 1 from there, and then 1, actually, they come from the center supply. And then you'd get any food that was left on there, but he's full anyway, so he actually wouldn't even need to eat all of these guys. But so you do get any food on there if you eat the last one. And this is going to go away. The player will discard these cards, but they will get a sort of compensation of cards equal to the number of cards they discard from the draw deck. So that's the basic gist of the basic mechanics. You discard cards to increase population, body size, add new species, you equip traits. You can do the whole discarding and equipping traits thing simultaneously, especially when you have like 6 players. So let's look at most of the trait cards and then I'll give the review. So of course we've already talked about carnivore. That lets you eat other creatures, but again, you cannot ever eat food for plants. Fat tissue is interesting. This says can store food on this card up to its body size. And then when you reveal the food cards on future rounds, you can take any food you may have stored on this guy and move it right to your player board there. So you can keep eating actually after you're full with this fat tissue fella here, and then kind of store that up for the next season. So that's pretty cool. Now you have here intelligence. This is kind of a cool one. This one allows you during the feeding phase to discard a card, and then you can, if you're a carnivore, discard a card and then sort of negate a sort of defensive effect, which we'll look at here in a minute. But if you're not a carnivore, you take 2 food instead of 1 on your turn. So you can quickly, sort of use your intelligence to get around certain obstacles. Next, we're going to look at burrowing. This species cannot be attacked if it has food equal to its population. So once it's full, it goes back in its hole, and then the carnivores cannot go ahead and eat it there. So the next thing we're going to look at here is the horns, and this is where you get into some combos here. So if a carnivore attacks something with horns, it must decrease its population by 1 when attacking. So it killed something in the herd, but then one of them got killed by the horns. However, if you had an intelligent carnivore, you could then use its ability to discard and then ignore this particular trait, right? So now you're starting to see some of the combos. Here we've got pack hunting. This is kind of neat. This species' body size is equal to its population plus its body size when determining if it can attack a species. So you've got a bunch of little critters here, and let's say you have 5 of them, they're only size 1. Well, then you're actually going to add that together. So it's considered a size 6 creature can then attack something technically larger than an individual, but multiples of these can take them down. Now we've got scavenger. So this is take one food from the food bank when any species is attacked by a carnivore. So you may say out of a combination that has, you have a carnivore, you attack something, even your own, and then this scavenger will trigger when anybody gets eaten. So it's going to go ahead and take that from the food bank, and that's out of the general supply here, not from the watering hole. All right, so next we're going to look at cooperation. This is a very interesting card. So you can see this little arrow here, and so the order that you set these up can be important. When the species takes food, your species to the right takes one food from the same source. Okay, so that's pretty interesting. Long neck. When the food cards are revealed, you take one plant food from the bank again, not from the watering hole. But then we have this one here. Take one additional food anytime the species feeds from the watering hole. Well, you can set up a cool combination like so with cooperation. So I have the one animal eat from the watering hole, it takes the food, and then triggers this ability, which causes it to get food from the watering hole, but it can actually get two. So that's kind of neat. And then you have here the hard shell, +3 body size if its species can be attacked. So again, you've got to have a really big predator to be able to eat these big turtles or tortoises. Symbiosis is a way you can protect your characters. The species cannot be attacked if the species to the right has a larger body size, so you've got to attack that one first. And then here you've got a last one here. Carnivore must be larger in population and body size to attack this, so defensive herding. So you can build up a very defensive sort of animal with horns, defensive herding, and then burrowing to get it back underneath. So there's a lot of combos to keep in mind. So that's some of the traits. I don't want to go over too many of them to keep the video short, but at the end of the game, you're going to score points for any food that you've collected. At the end of the round, food's going to come off your boards, go into your bags, and be safely stored, and you're going to need to eat for the next round or the next season. You're going to get 1 point for each species that you have in front of you, for each population. So if I had 4 of these, I'd get 4 points. And then for each trait on there, so 1 point for each population, 1 point for each card, and 1 point for each food. And then you're just going to play until you run through the deck, and that will trigger the end of the game. You'll play the last round, and whoever has most points is the winner. Okay, so that is the gist of the game. How do I like this game? I would say I don't like it with 2 players, but I do like it with more than 2. Now the game can be brutal because if you're not careful and you don't set up very much defense, then you're going to be very susceptible to carnivores. But if you sort of out of luck as a carnivore, you're not able to eat, then your population is going to decrease for the amount of food that you couldn't feed it. And that goes for any animal. So sometimes you're going to have rounds where there's not a lot of food, and so your population can decrease very quickly. But that's kind of the cool thing about it. I like the game that you have where it's going to be sort of a fluctuating sort of thing. So you're going to have some species that sort of start up and then they're going to go away, whether they don't get enough food to eat or they get eaten, they don't survive, and you kind of got to go back to the drawing board, if you will, and invent some kind of new animal that hopefully will survive. So it is a very basic kind of simple game, but there is a lot of cool, interesting combinations of things that are going to happen, and there's going to be a little bit of table talk that's going to happen because you want to sort of pick on the leader a little bit, which is okay with me, but you're going to have some of that in the game, and you've got to be very careful about what's going on and really keep your eyes open. And like I said, you want to really set up the combos of the cooperation and lots of defense, and like the brontosaurus getting in, and like a brontosaurus with burrowing, right? So you flip the food cards, it feeds, and then it has fat tissue and it gets all so it's back and it's hidden and it's got all it's full. Like you can do cool stuff like that and set up cool combos where you're safe from these big giant predators that might be roaming around. And I like it because it feels very organic and natural, and it's definitely an improvement on the original, which had some die rolling. So you basically rolled dice to determine the amount of food. I liked it, the first one, for that, because in that game you had a lot more opportunity for starvation, whereas this one is a little bit more controlled. But I do like it better that you can control it, because you can really sort of poison, if you will, the food supply and try to do it in your favor. So that's very neat. And I like the thematicness, so to speak, of these different cards. They do seem like what those abilities would, how they would be. So that's really cool. And I know they've talked about doing expansions. I'd love to see, I know there's like a flying expansion for the original game. I think there's like 2 expansions actually for the original game, which I haven't played. But it's neat. It's got kind of an educational feel to it, and it feels like an ecosystem sort of evolving. You know, animals are coming and going, and you know, you get this kind of cool, different style of animal that you try to do, or you try to build like a bunch of little ones that scurry around and get their food, and you know, jump and swarm on the bigger ones and all that stuff. So it's very evocative in that way and very cool. And the components are just like out of this world. The card art's nice. I love the little bags and the cool Brontosaurus token. And I mean, really awesome job on the components. So definitely a cool game. I mean, I would throw this in the classroom if you're teaching like, you know, biology or life sciences. That's maybe the middle school or early high school level. You know, I could see folks getting into that quite a bit. So definitely take a look at it. Very cool theme and very interesting, and feels very sciencey, you know, in a lot of ways, but it's very fun, and you can be a big jerk about it. I think it's kind of classified as sort of a Euro-y type of game, but this is definitely in that Ameritrash vibe, because I'm totally eating you, right? So yeah, so that's pretty fun though. I like that. You know, you can just go eat somebody's animal, or eat your own animals. That's even fun. Okay, take a look at it. Thanks.